The Fantasy Football Show.
Hello everybody and welcome to Clash of the Correspondents, the weekly show where James and I bring on a couple of our correspondents for different teams that play FPL, that follow their clubs. And this week we have Clash of the Correspondent.
Yeah, it's a sad one.
Yeah, unfortunately Mig couldn't join us, Mig Tavius from Palace. So we got the other South London
I don't know if
club on.
Mig's just got an issue with the other correspondents because unfortunately when we had him on in game week 3,
correct,
is my cat playing couldn't make it. So the only two times we've not managed to get two people on together both featured Mig, but we'll get him on in the near future and we'll certainly
100%.
be covering off some Palace stuff here. But we are joined by Adam at 35Who, our Arsenal correspondent. How are you, pal?
Yeah, not too bad. Pretty buoyed by recent Arsenal results, which is nice to come to you in a positive mood as opposed to how I usually am.
Yeah, that is true. I was going to say, my new manager is better than your new manager.
Can we please not get onto that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been quietly impressed with what I've seen at Arsenal as well. I think you were in a similar situation to West Ham where it was never a question of talent. The talent's been there, the players have been there. It's been more man management or the way the team have been set up and ultimately work rate, which is now, I know James has been bemoaning his Spurs side that they just don't work hard enough, but the work rate now is considerably improved with your team, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's ironic because that was one of the things Emery was sort of, I guess I was guilty of it as well. I praised him for the intensity that he brought early on, but you could really tell that dipped as the players started to lose faith in him, in his game plan and his sort of communication issues. But yeah, Arteta seems to, in what he's saying in the press and what you see on the training ground, have instilled this my way or the highway kind of philosophy, and the players are actually buying into it, which is a nice change.
Mm.
It's interesting, Adam, that the my way or the highway seems to have Mesut Ozil involved at the moment. I think to surprise of quite a few. Can you talk about him and the change in him in recent weeks?
Yeah, it surprised me as well, to be honest, because I assumed that when Arteta came in, he would sort of copy this Pep 4-3-3 style formation, which he sort of has in a way, but Ozil has been able to come into that midfield three and then break out of it in a way that I didn't really see him doing. He's, for someone who's, I can't remember how old he is, but he's in the latter stages of his career, certainly. He's surprisingly adapted to this new position because he's not the traditional Mesut Ozil number 10 anymore. He's putting in like actual work, like a normal player, I suppose. It was the stat everyone was talking about against Manchester United is that he ran further than any other player. I think he made more recoveries than any other player.
I think it's more defensive recoveries than anyone else in that game as well.
And so he seems to have put faith in him for now. How long term that is, I don't really know. And FPL wise, he hasn't created any big chances.
Do you think
has taken over?
Do you think Ozil gets a bit of he feels like a player from an Arsenal fan point of view that's always given another chance. Like you get certain players that don't perform, and then after 2 or 3 stabs, they just get binned. Whereas Ozil, if he pulls it out of the bag, he'll always still get that other chance to win back the fans. As much as they rail on him, he always still does have that kind of opportunity to win back people's hearts.
Yeah, I think that's because it's a case of
300 grand a week.
Yeah,
you need to make him work.
Like sunk cost fallacy is who got the assist would say.
Yeah.
But it's partly because when he signed originally, he was our record signing, and it was such a sort of seismic shift, or at least we thought at the time, in the mentality at Arsenal in bringing in this Galactico-esque player, that fans, I think a lot of fans still want him to be the Ozil that we thought we signed. And then he puts in performances like he did a couple of seasons ago. Maybe it was last season. It must have been last season against Leicester at home, and he ran the show in that game. And those kind of performances remind you just how magical he can be on his day. And at the end of the day, that's sort of what we want to see when we go to watch our teams play. We want to see someone capable of sort of making us realise why we enjoy football. And Mesut Ozil was certainly one of those players at his best. And then at his worst, he makes you think, God, why are we paying you 350 grand a week?
Adam, you wrote a brilliant piece for us, which we'll link in the threads to this podcast, which we released on Sunday, about sort of the shift from Arteta and some stuff tactically. Can you explain for the listeners what he's changed so quickly in the setup?
Yeah, so in the article I sort of broke it down into a couple of sections, but so yeah, I think it's pressing, how to put it, tactical pressing. So rather than sporadic stuff that we sort of saw under Emery, which was more like moth to a flame or like bees to honey kind of thing.
Flies to shit.
Pressing units and zones on the pitch. But yeah, so it meant that you would have specific units targeting specific zones on the pitch, if that makes sense. So rather than the team becoming disconnected by players running all over the place, specific pods would go after the ball. So the distances don't get as messed up, which is something that really, really irritated me under Emery, is that the midfield would push up and then they would become disconnected from the defence. So that's been really, really important to stopping Arsenal being as vulnerable on the counter-attack. And then the inverted fullbacks is probably the most notable Pepism, I guess, you can see, particularly in Maitland-Niles. I think he's been key to this. So as opposed to under Emery, the fullbacks were the focal point of attack, but in the way they were pushed out wide. So we saw last year, Kolasinac was such a potential FPL asset because basically all of our attacks came down that left wing. Whereas now on the right, Maitland-Niles in particular comes inside spaces in the centre of sort of perfectly suited to his skill set in a way, because he is naturally a central midfielder. So those are the two biggest and most impressive changes I've seen so far, for sure.
I'm interested to just elaborate on that point on the fullbacks, Adam. How do you see that being affected when presumably Bellerin comes back in when he's fit?
To be honest, I'm really interested to see that as well, because obviously Bellerin is more of a Kyle Walker type fullback than a Zinchenko type fullback. But he is capable on the ball, but I imagine it will mean the midfield makeup changes. So rather than having Granit Xhaka in there, who is, how to put this charitably, a little less mobile, I think I've described him before as having the turning circle of a dumpster truck. But I think rather than Xhaka and Guendouzi and Torreira to make up for that lack of midfield mobility. But Bellerin will certainly, I imagine he become more of a focal point of the attack, and he'll definitely bring the best out of Pepe, for sure.
Can that, to balance that off, could that potentially mean until, again, sort of Tierney's back, sort of March time, that Maitland-Niles could switch to left back to sort of balance that off?
It could do, yeah. It certainly could do. There has been talk that Kolasinac will leave in either in January or the summer. There's interest from Serie A apparently, but the fact that Tierney is injured makes that less likely, I think, unless we go out and sign another left back, which with our crisis at centre back seems unlikely. So yeah, Maitland-Niles is certainly capable of playing on the left. He's done it before. He played there in the Europa League when he first broke through, albeit at left wing back. And it's certainly something I'd be interested to see, because he's a really promising player, and if we're speaking FPL wise, he's a really cheap route into what looks like now a slightly less calamitous defence.
On FPL, Adam, if I was to dive in on two Arsenal players this weekend, which will come onto Palace's injury list, might not be the worst thing to do in the world this weekend.
Yeah.
And you were to buy one defensively and one offensively, where would you go?
Defensively, I would definitely go Maitland-Niles, mainly because he is the cheapest, and I'm not sure that Bellerin will be rushed back straight away. There's certainly concerns about Bellerin's injuries and how they're going to affect his long-term development at Arsenal. So I think they're going to be more cautious with easing him back in to the side. And Palace really aren't much of an offensive threat at the moment, I don't think. Especially with Milivojevic banned, so their penalty route is kind of curtailed. And offensively, it would probably be Pepe, which is weird to say. Yeah, I know. I don't think... I think with Palace's defensive worries and Pepe's sort of his increasing influence and his slightly changing profile as a player under Arteta so far, his late runs into the box will certainly challenge a weakened Palace side, I think.
Do you own any Arsenal assets at the moment?
No.
Just out of interest. You never know. I mean, Aubameyang's always... He's Mr. Reliable, isn't he, really? He's at 13 goals or 14 goals for the season. He is Mr. Reliable. And when you have a player like... Even when Harry Kane dropped down to 10.9 and 10.8, you know, players that are that consistent, how do they drop in value? But he has dropped down to kind of 10.8. Your FPL season is... I don't know, bizarre? How can I put it? You're sitting at 250k right now.
Yeah.
Started the season badly.
Let's not talk about that.
Badly. But I suppose it's for a lot of FPL players. I mean, game week 1, you scored 60-something points. 63, was it? 64. It was just that everybody else was in the 80s. You wildcarded into a 28. Another 31 followed 2 weeks later, and yet you're still sitting above me and above James. Oh, are you top 250k?
No, you're beating me.
So it kind of goes to show it's after that, you've just been ridiculously consistent with 60s, 65s, 70s, 60s, 65s, and really clawed your way back up into the top 250k.
Yeah, it's interesting because after my wild card, I can't remember whether it was my overall rank or my game week rank was 3 million. So it's like the worst wild card I've ever had. But yeah, like you say, I sort of changed my mentality. I think I was becoming too. I was trying to be too clever.
Okay.
Like my wild card team included Pepe. It included Pepe and Iwobi for some reason. And I think I was trying to be too clever. I think I was trying to think one step ahead. And then you look at the time, players like McGinn and Son were the ones that everyone owned and were performing. And I tried to get ahead of the curve and be too clever rather than just going for the simple option. And now I think the reason why I've done quite well is I brought in Danny Ings at the right time. And on the game week before Christmas, I was travelling down to Wales, so I did an involuntary match of the day challenge, and I captained him. And that was the game week. I think I can't remember whether he got 1 or 2, but that really cut my rank in half basically. And there have been a couple of bumps along the road. Then I sold Trent before the Liverpool blank, and then didn't have him for his 24-point haul. But I've rectified that now with a triple Liverpool in the form of I've got TAA, Mane, and Salah. Oof. And the way my team is at the moment, I'm kind of set up for Liverpool's double and pretty much beyond that, I think.
Just on that, Adam, just interested to know, just because you've got both. And I think me, as in Mane and Salah, I don't think me and Suj are going to go down that particular route. Which one will you captain in the double?
I'll toss a coin. Probably.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice issue to have, I guess you could say, but it's still an issue that you have to consider. I think I know people. There's been a lot of debate on Twitter about if you're going to go with triple Liverpool, do you go double defence and one midfield, or double midfield and one defence? And my rationale for doubling up on Mane and Salah has been it's more a fear in a weird way. Like, I would fear not owning one of Mane or Salah more than I fear not owning Robertson in my situation.
I think the whole FPL Twitterverse has to brace itself for everybody that captains the right one being FPL putting themselves out there as FPL gods, and everyone that captains the wrong one literally saying they're going to quit FPL and leave Twitter and everything. That's going to be the one week to stay off Twitter if you're not interested in Salah.
We all know the three Liverpool players who will score most in a double game week, and that's Gomez, Henderson and Wijnaldum. I think we all know that.
Well, you never know. A cheeky James Milner penalty might pop up there as well.
He's injured, I think.
Oh, is he?
So Salah could be back on
Pens.
the pens. Adam, just to take it back to Arsenal if we can. Aubameyang, there's been rumours with a potential move either now or at the end of the summer, which he's quashed in the last week or so. Do you see him staying in this kind of position off the left? And does that make him a worse FPL pick than it would on paper? Because it feels like he's gone under the radar so much. He's the fourth highest scorer in the game, 0.2 cheaper than what he started, now 10.8. What's your thoughts on Aubameyang, Adam?
I think, like you say, in terms of the transfer rumours, he's definitely come out quite strongly in recent days to quash any rumours. Because I think the original quotes came in the French press, and then his captain's programme notes for the before the Leeds game, he was pretty certain in saying he would stay. FPL wise, I've always maintained that him playing on the left hasn't and doesn't really affect his output. In terms of how I see that moving forward, it's interesting because what Arteta has done with Pepe is kind of use him a little bit like Sterling at Man City in terms of trying to get him into goal scoring positions in the box for those classic sort of Man City tap-ins. Like, if you look at where Sterling scores a lot of his goals for Man City, penalty area goals, penalty area shots, he's getting a lot of efforts in that area. And with Aubameyang's sort of lethal finishing credentials, if that is replicated for him on the left, that makes him a really good asset. I think the way the wider sort of game dynamics, if you will, is shifting with so much value in the forward line with the likes of Jimenez, Vardy, Ings, potentially Calvert-Lewin, maybe the likes of Morpay. Sorry?
Abraham, Rashford, they're all under 10 million, right?
Yeah, exactly. It sort of puts me off those premium strikers in general, certainly until we see more attacking, like, concrete output from Arsenal, I would say. Because, like, if you look at the Bournemouth game, for example, and I know that was Arteta's first game in charge, but we were so wasteful that day. And Lacazette was guilty of it himself. He really needs to find some form. And if he does, could be a potentially good FPL asset. But
I think the captaincy question comes into play as well. Quite often, if you own Aubameyang, like you can't not own a Liverpool attacking asset in terms of Mane or Salah unless you're really mad. And so then when do you captain Aubameyang? And then if you're not going to captain him, do you want to put nearly £11 million into a player that you're not going to captain necessarily?
Exactly.
And that's quite often the dilemma. I know James raises it a lot. Like, think about your captaincy, and do you want to put that much money in a player you're never going to captain?
Exactly. And if you think we've all, like we were just speaking about, having triple Liverpool, and then pretty much everyone owns KDB and everyone owns Vardy, you're quickly running out of funds to plump 11 million up front for someone that you're not going to captain consistently.
Yep.
There is an argument though, if you've got a KDB Vardy and if you're just going to one of Mane or Salah, you can fit him in. I think what a lot of people are considering at the moment who are going double defensive is, what differential can I make to make impact against that sort of Salah and Mane combination? And people like Aubameyang, possibly Heung-min Son at his ownership, these sort of guys are affordable if you're not going Salah and Mane. And then you're kind of going with the verses. And obviously, if you've got sort of Vardy, KDB plus Salah Mane, there's not too much of a need to captain Aubameyang in the near future.
No.
His ownership's under 20%, which, considering the points he scored, is quite mad, really. But it feels like we've never really considered him all season.
Plus, there's going to be a lot of dead teams.
It also feels like with Aubameyang, his points returns are sporadic in the sense of they're quite unpredictable.
Yep. He does pick up a lot of BPS. We did raise it in a show a little while ago. I think it's 23 BPS from 20 games. So it's more than a point a game in terms of BPS from Aubameyang.
I think his sporadic nature has sort of reflected Arsenal in general this season. Like, you never know, or you didn't really know how Arsenal were going to perform from an attacking sense, other than they were likely to be pretty underwhelming. And if anyone was going to score, it would be Aubameyang. But I think now, certainly I feel there's more of a spread of attacking potential from a purely footballing sense at Arsenal. Like I was saying, if Lacazette can find some form, the amount of chances he's getting, he could certainly start
tear it up. Let's talk about. Guys, let's talk about the game this week, because a couple of weeks ago, you'd probably have happily come away from Selhurst with a draw, but now you probably want to be thinking 3 points is a must here, really.
Yeah, absolutely. With their injury crisis that's going on, Milivojevic being suspended, I think, is really, really significant. He always seems to put in a man of the match performance against us, and I sort of made a glib joke about the penalties, but I guess that is really a thing when you consider Wilfried Zaha is likely to be running up against C.O.T.C coming in off his wing, and Granit Xhaka's there, so he's always capable of a meltdown, as we saw in the reverse fixture. So yeah, I think. And Palace are right above us in the table. I tweeted something to the effect of, our next two games are against Crystal Palace and Sheffield United, and they're both the teams above us in the table. So 6 points from these next two games is not vital, but
puts you back where you probably kind of
really, really
want to be.
Yeah, definitely. And with the crisis, in air quotes, going on at the other North London club at the moment, it will give us a nice opportunity to make some ground up.
Yeah, that's going to come out rubbish on the audio, Adam, because I didn't make any sound, mate. I just want to highlight some stuff on Palace as Mig's not with us, unfortunately. So they've had this run of fixtures which has really appealed during. We'd kind of highlighted in August that they probably had the best December on paper of any side. And here's some numbers that will sum up Palace. So they've won one of the last 6, but lost one of the last 8. So there's obviously quite a few draws in there. Their record in home games this season is a very mixed bag. From 10 games, they've won 4, drawn 3, lost 3. Here's some mad stats for you. They have the joint best defensive record in home games. They have the worst attacking record in home games. They've only been 18 goals scored so far this season at Selhurst Park, which is obviously under 2 per game. Palace have scored 9, conceded 9. They've only won once against any side placed above 13th in the table, which was against Manchester United back in game week 3. And when you look at some of their attacking numbers overall for the whole season, they've had the fewest shots on target, fewest big chances created, the lowest XG of any club. But for goals conceded, they rank 4th of the 20 teams. And that's why Palace are doing okay because defensively they're holding it together at the moment. We discussed Suj a couple of weeks ago about Palace possibly so far this season being the team that's punching above their weight the most. It's not to disrespect Sheffield United or Newcastle, but with the injury record, the lack of money spent, they've performed quite well with what they've got. Excuse me. However,
the injuries are in the defensive areas now,
Lord.
and this is the problem.
Yeah.
Well, they've got Kyle Walker-Peters now, so...
Well, that's important to mention for people. Obviously, got
Whether
a
or not
lot
he'll
of people
play.
would have Martin Kelly. So Joel Ward he's not going to play at the weekend, but he's not too far away from fitness. And the rumours are, if you believe the people in the know, that Kyle Walker-Peters may be going to Crystal Palace on loan.
Right.
Whether he would get
Straight in.
Kelly out of the team, I'm not sure. Walker-Peters can also cover at left back, so it does give them sort of cover on either side because they've got no backup for PVA either, who's another player who's missing. So I just wanted to shout out a predicted team for Palace at the weekend because I think this will give you an idea of where they're at for injuries. So I've listed it as Gator in goal, Kelly, Tompkins, Cahill, Riederveld at left back, who's awful, with Milivojevic suspended, Chiati, McCarthy and MacArthur, Zaha, Ayew, and then the final place could be one of four. Victor Camarasa, who Mig said to me a few weeks back, don't know why he takes his boots to games because Hodgson doesn't even want to bring him on. I'm not sure why he's even there. Connor Wickham, possibly, which could mean Jordan Ayew in a wide position. Christian Benteke might make the weekend. And the other one, just a name to mention, is Brandon Pierrick, who got minutes very late on against Norwich in the previous FPL game week. Mig thinks that he might get the nod.
That's a lot of stats there that it's very schizophrenic. It's like really good in certain areas, really bad in others. The concern here is the defensive injuries that make them a little shaky. And, you know, in much the same way in the first, we'd probably say 14 game weeks of the season, Liverpool were leaking the ones. Palace have started doing that. They're not letting in twos and threes, but they're leaking the ones. And if you own defensive assets, that's enough to lose your FPL points, isn't it, really? I think this is going to be a real good test for Arsenal. This is a game that you could and should be winning. The big boys like the Cities and Liverpools will go and get a job, do a job. It may not be the prettiest game in the world, but they'll get the job done. That's what you want to see, really, from Arsenal, isn't it?
No, yeah, definitely. This is the classic, at least under Arsene Wenger, it's the Arsenal won't turn up in these kind of games. They'll get kicked off the park and draw or lose or something like that. And to be fair, the reverse fixture at the Emirates, we were 2-0 up and surrendered that lead pretty in a capitulation that sort of summarised certainly the latter time Emery was in charge. But yeah, like you say, their defensive injury crisis is such that I'd be surprised if we didn't win. But I mean, it all depends on the performance, I guess, because that's really what we're looking for as Arsenal fans now for the rest of the season, because we've effectively written it off. There's very little chance we'll even get Europa League football. So we're just looking for the signs of a philosophy and the signs that players are actually buying into what Arteta's trying to do. But yeah, I'd be disappointed if we didn't win.
Honestly, I don't think that's right. The way the league is and the way teams are losing points and dropping points like United and Spurs and even Chelsea, I think it's too early to be writing the season off. I really do. Anyone from that gets on a good run and finds some consistency could easily crack into the fourth place spot or fifth place spot. It's a lot of football still to play.
Yeah, I do definitely agree with you. But I mean, James will know that you were tweeting that you just want to enjoy football again.
Oh, let's not go there.
but it's sort of like how I felt at the end of Emery's time, and I'd take signs of like these are, we've got boots at the moment. There is a sign that Arteta is instilling something, a plan, like a tactical identity that the players are buying into, and it is producing football that people are liking to watch, and it's sort of more in line with modern football, as it were, than sort of what we saw under Emery. And that's bringing enough joy, certainly at the moment, and it's enough of a change that if we didn't make European football, I'd be okay. And I think that's probably a sign of how bad it had gotten under Emery, where there were jokes about Arsenal being in a relegation battle, but you sort of did begin to think if this guy sticks around too much longer, you are going to have to look over your shoulder.
Just a note on Palace, because obviously you said that defensively very good, but it's worth noting that of the big seven, and we have to include Leicester at the moment, or the so-called big seven, that have been to Selhurst this year, which is Leicester, Liverpool and Man City, they all scored twice. I think Arsenal can expect, if Arsenal turn up and perform like they've performed in the game since Arteta took over, they'll win on Saturday. I think the concern for Arsenal fans will be, will they? One of the things I'd pointed out, Adam, and I don't know if you got any thoughts on this, was the fact that in the Chelsea and Manchester United home fixtures last season under Emery, which you won both games 2-0, those were probably your two best performances of last season. Is there anything in that?
I was going to say I did. I hadn't really thought of that until you raised it on the podcast, and it kind of got me worried. But then again, I think that I would be more worried if I hadn't seen the sort of beginnings of the tactical plan at Bournemouth. Like, I think that game, even though it was a draw against Bournemouth, who are doing pretty terribly at the moment, and a lot of people would think Arsenal should win that game, rightly, the fact that there is now a consistent identity that is being built upon game after game is what gives me encouragement. And the fact that I think personally Arsenal should have won the Chelsea game. Like, the two goals that Chelsea scored were, and it was just complete individual capitulation. And it's something that XG doesn't really convey. Like, so Chelsea outscored Arsenal on XG, but if you look at the goals, one is a huge Lennon mistake, and the other is Mustafi completely abandoning the tactical plan and just deciding to backtrack rather than press. Tammy Abraham, as all the other centre-backs have been doing for the rest of the game. So yeah, I think we should have won that game, and if we win that game, we're in a much better position in the table, and I think there would be less wider scepticism about what Arteta's doing at the moment.
So we always like to get a cheeky little prediction from the correspondents. We've only got you today, Adam, to kind of wrap up. What are you thinking? Because I've got my mind on what I think's going to happen.
Okay, I think Arsenal will win either 2-0 or 3-1. And for some reason, I think Pepe will score. But that's about as. That's
because you picked him as your player pick. You're now continuing to back yourself.
Doubling down.
Honestly, I think it's going to be 3 or 4-0 to Arsenal. I genuinely think, sometimes you get these performances where everything clicks. I watched the Leeds game on Monday, and the first half, second half, the difference between the two, and the players said that Arteta got in amongst them at half time and gave them a bit of a shoeing. He's going to get them up for it, and I actually think it's going to be one of those where it all clicks into place. 3 or 4-0 I'm going for.
I think from my perspective, for Arsenal to get that many goals, you need to see like a real return to form of Lacazette. And he sort of looks a little bit half injured, half not, struggling with fitness, maybe struggling with a bit of confidence. Like if you against United, when he completely turned Harry Maguire and then just scuffed his shot out for a throw, and that sort of typifies his form at the moment. So if Arsenal are going to win 3 or 4-0, which I hope they do, he will be key to it.
What are you thinking, James?
I think narrow Arsenal win, low scoring, 1 or 2-0 would be my expectations. I can't speak factually for Mig, but I think he would say that he would expect Arsenal to win by a similar score.
Interesting. Thank you for joining us on Clash of the Correspondents, Adam. There is a brand spanking shiny new article. It's been on the website for a couple of days by Adam. New year, new decade, new Arsenal ? Question mark. So if you are listening and you fancy a little read, it's a really good read on what Adam's thoughts are on Arsenal and what to expect.
Not going to lie,
differences.
when I first saw the article and you saying it again there, I was sick in the back of my mouth. But I will link the article below the podcast when it's released on Twitter.
And of course, all the interaction and insight and what have you on Twitter, Adam. We do appreciate it, and the support from the Planet FPL community as well.
Yeah, much love, Adam. Thanks very much. We managed to get through all of that without mentioning AFTV once as well. Yeah,
there was two things. We didn't talk about those guys. And also, Adam, you had the opportunity to put the boot into Spurs a little bit, and you were very restrained, I would say. So, you know,
he knows I'll cut him off.
Mr. Nice Guy here, very much so. We'll do that over a beer one day when we can catch up over a game.
Definitely.
Excellent. Guys, thanks for tuning in to Clash of the Correspondents or Clash of the Correspondent this week, and we'll definitely be getting Mig on soon. Join us tomorrow for the final plan. We'll be running down our final thoughts before the deadline. Don't forget, it's a Friday deadline. You can't be mucking around, going out on Friday night thinking you'll sort your team out on Saturday morning. Get it done nice and early on Friday so that you can forget about it. So we'll be back at you with what our final thoughts are on transfers. You're not making any, or you made? Or
I'm done. -4 taken.
Oh, I've made one already, which was sorting out my keeper situation, and I'll be making one more and maybe two more. So do stay tuned for that. Other than that, thanks for liking the show, subscribe, comment, tweet us, and everything good. Ciao for now.
Thanks, Adam. Cue music, man, child.
The Fantasy Football Show.